Silver has to be one of the most infuriating characters to play against right now. In the current state of the game, it feels like if you have a Silver on your team, they're either extremely good and go 20-0, or extremely bad and go 0-20. And yet for whatever reason, when the enemy team has a Silver, my teammates decide to run it down and she becomes an unkillable Demon Queen. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about why she's so strong, how do we counter this character, and from a design standpoint, what can we do to change her or maybe nerf her. I'm Duck Films, an Eternus ranked player and a farmer, Marvel Rivals coach and analyst, and if you like anything Deadlock, make sure to check out this channel. But anyways, let's dive straight in. Now, believe it or not, Silver is one of the most oppressive heroes in Deadlock because her kit gives her access to tools that most heroes have to spend thousands of souls to acquire. She combines devastating burst damage, powerful utility, and exceptional survivability into a single package, making her a threat from the opening laning phase all the way into the late game, whether she's poking from her human form with range, or tearing through enemies in her werewolf-like form. Silver always has an answer to pretty much any situation and any scenario. Now, why exactly is Silver so strong? Well, the first thing is that she has a pretty overloaded base kit. Silver's greatest strength is how much value is packed into her abilities. While many heroes need multiple items to gain utility, Silver starts the game with it built directly into her kit. Now, she has access to powerful crowd control effects such as slows that cripple enemy stamina management and disarms that can completely shut down weapon-focused heroes. This allows to spend her souls on damage and survivability while still bringing elite utility to every single fight. And this is certainly true when you look at some of her abilities like Boot Kit, where you dash forward, kick the enemy first hit, dealing melee damage while pushing yourself off and marking them. The thing is, shooting the marked target deals spirit damage and removes the mark. You do an insane amount of extra burst damage that pretty much makes them, stunned or displaced for a half a second. The next thing is about the Entangling Bola, or her third ability, where you throw a bola dealing spirit damage, applying slow, and preventing movement abilities and or using some sort of stamina, which is a big crucial factor a lot of the time. Now, she also does an insane amount of explosive burst damage. Silver's damage output is starting from the moment the game begins. Her first ability, Slamfire, deals damage based on an enemy's current health, making it especially effective against healthier targets. This allows her to win trades that other heroes simply can't contest, chunky opponents for massive amounts of health before the fight even truly begins. Combined with her weapon damage, she can quickly force enemies out of lane or set up easy kill opportunities. When you look at her base kit, her base gun, Hair of the Dog, does 42 damage per second with a fall-off range between 20 meters to 46. Its single shot and the reload can be interrupted, so poking the targets down from, decent amount of range is really strong, especially in the early stages of the laning phase, where 9 out of 10 times you should be applying a ton of pressure that the enemies can't even really truly contest. Now, the other big aspect of this insane burst damage in the early stage is Slamfire, where you instantly reload your gun, you gain bonus fire rate, and deal bonus weapon damage based on a target's health for a limited number of shots, but suffer from reduced accuracy. So when you're up close, that's when you want to pop Slamfire. You get 3 max shots, so your base damage in general would be your weapon damage times 3, meaning you can get outwards of 142 damage per Slamfire. That's just the base. You also have to factor in that you do current health as damage, which is 2.5%, which can be quite a lot depending on who you're playing against. That's why it feels like in the early stages of the laning phase, or just the game in general, it feels like your health is completely gone by the time you're fighting Silver. But the thing that truly and utterly shines is the power of dual forms, both her human form and lichen form. So Silver effectively plays with 2 different combat styles, giving her tremendous flexibility. In her human form, she excels at controlling space, poking enemies from range, and delivering heavy weapon bursts while staying relatively safe with her extended mobility. Versus in lichen form, she becomes an entirely different monster. Her durability skyrockets, her sustain becomes incredibly difficult to overcome, and her close range damage can erase targets in seconds. The transformation allows her to pressure both squishy backliners and frontline tanks, making her dangerously regardless of the team composition. The big thing that I think a lot of people need to grasp is that because she can basically seamlessly switch between these 2 identities, Silver barely finds herself in a situation where she feels anywhere weak. Now, I opened up a Deadlock Reddit for one of the first times in a while, and I saw that people are saying that this character isn't strong. Now, I think this kind of concept of this character isn't strong goes in tune with certain levels or certain ranks. Sometimes people can't get that transformation in, which that can certainly be the case, but in a lot of instances, pretty much every single silver should be transforming. Maybe you're just not building the right items, maybe you're not landing your shots, but these are things you need to keep in mind. If you're managing to get the swap or the transformation, the character can be utterly unstoppable. Now, the other thing is looking a little bit more into her ultimate, and that is Silver's ultimate is one of the most impactful abilities in the entire game. The transformation dramatically shifts the pace of any engagement, turning her from a ranged threat into a relentless frontliner/baller. Once transformed, she gains the tools needed to dive deep into enemy territory, survive enormous amounts of punishment, and overwhelm targets through raw damage output. A well-played Silver can use her ultimate to start fights, finish fights, or completely turn losing engagements in her favor. If she gets access to the enemy backline, she can quickly take over the entire fight because for whatever reason, her kit's pretty inflated and she has a disarm built into her own kit. Another thing to keep in mind is why this character is super impactful is that she can instantly change the pace of the fight. If you get her like 1 HP and you're chasing her down, if she gets likened and transforms, she practically transforms and gains all of her HP back. This is one of the biggest topics and issues that I find with this character is the fact that you practically get her 1 HP, she transforms, and she's back to being at a relatively healthy state and she can easily fight again. I think when it comes to this character, that's one of the biggest issues that, are just with this character in general. But more of the ideas a little bit later on. Now I want to talk about some of the ways you can maybe counter her that I've kind of figured out and some of the consensus from a lot of other top players. And that is, while Silver is incredibly powerful, she isn't necessarily unbeatable. Beating her requires discipline, positioning, and understanding when she is the strongest. The biggest idea is maintaining proper spacing. The biggest mistake players make against Silver is allowing her to fight on her terms. Her werewolf form thrives in close range engagements when her damage and sustain are at their peak. You want to force her to spend time chasing targets rather than dealing damage. The more distance you can create, the less effective her transformation becomes. Now, that being said, she does have a lot of different movement opportunities, that being both her leap, her stamina bar, of course, as a factor, and usually a Bristol Locket if they're running that. But just understanding the range you need to be playing at is one of the more crucial aspects, so getting items like maybe Mystic Slow are a really good idea. Now, something that I think a lot of people forget about or kind of skip over is investing into anti-heal. Much of Silver's survivability comes from her ability to sustain through damage while transformed. So healing reduction dramatically lowers her effectiveness and makes her far easier to focus down. Now, a Silver that cannot heal is significantly less threatening than one freely draining health during a fight. So things to kind of think about is that if you're playing an ability focused character, things like Healbane are a great option, Spirit Burn as well. And if you're playing a Mouse 1 character, so an ADC or however you want to describe it as, Toxic Bullets, Weakening Headshot into Crippling, and of course, you have Healbane, like I said, are all really good options. Crippling is probably one of the most slept on picks, I think, against Silver and other tankier characters. I think if you're fighting against a Silver and you're not being able to kill her, if one or maybe two of your teammates pick up a crippling headshot, it's probably the best case scenario. Now, typically you just want one person, but I say two just in case one person is not in the fight or is dead, whatever the case may be. But getting crippling headshot is a pretty good idea. Following that, Silver relies heavily on staying in range and constantly attacking to maximize her damage output. So things like Disarms, Disarming Hex, Monocrill Disarm, Rusted Barrel, Disarm in general is really good. Curse is another good item. Stuns, roots, and other forms of crowd control interrupt her momentum and prevent her from getting value from her transformation. The longer she is unable to attack, the less dangerous she becomes. So cycling crowd control and communicating effectively to your team is a really good way to shut her down. Understanding that you're going first with stuns into another stun from somebody else into a third stun from somebody else, this cycling that rotation is a good idea to be able to shut down this character. Now, some things that people kind of sleep on or overlook Deadlock is that you can literally kite out the ultimate if, of course, she doesn't use her leap or she uses it. And that is when Silver activates her ultimate, many players panic and try to stand the ground. Instead, the best response is often to disengage temporarily and force her to chase. There's a pretty noticeable audio cue when she's transforming, so in the process of transforming, you can use that to try to, kite her away. Of course, she has tools and abilities to close the distance, but these are things you just need to keep in mind. Again, you have to remember that her transformed state is strongest when enemies remain nearby and allow her to chain damage and healing together. By retreating, repositioning, and forcing her to overextend, you can waste a valuable transformation time and create opportunities for your team to punish her. Now, another big concept or idea is you want to focus her after the dive. Silver often has to commit aggressively to reach priority targets. Once she dives in, she can become isolated from her teammates. So if you survive her initial burst, you want to turn your attention toward her immediately, and you want to coordinate focus fire combined with anti-heal and crowd control, and you can bring her down before she has the opportunity to sustain through damage. But knowing when and when not to do this is also a crucial aspect. Sometimes it's better to ignore her for a second, try to trade out the enemy team's backline, and then focus your attention back to her. If you don't have crippling headshot on your team, maybe doing that is probably the best of trading out backlines. If you do have that crippling headshot, if you do have a ton of anti-heal items, then focusing her down is a better idea. Because it's either she's going to be a distraction, soaking up all the damage while your team is getting ran down by the rest of their team, or you're trading their backline. And if that's not the case, if you have the items and the opportunity to shred down the Silver, then that is the best case scenario. It all really depends on the game state, and just how strong the Silver is what you want to be thinking about. From that, how do we nerf this character? This section of the video is going to be an open discussion about some of the ideas I thought of, and if you have your own ideas about nerfing this character, do let me know in the comments down below. Like I said, this character is extremely strong. Despite what people say on Reddit or online, the character is undeniably strong, and a lot of people and top players have, made this, true and clear just how overwhelming and game-changing this character is. Now, some of the ideas that I have are things like when she transforms, she shouldn't be getting so much HP back from her human to Lycan form. She still should gain a decent amount, but it shouldn't be enough to completely change the fight narrative. Another idea is with her tail whack and Lycan. I don't think it should disarm. I honestly don't feel this character should have a built-in disarm because she already has so much to her kit. With her tail whack, she disarms and slows briefly. Following that, she has a leap that gains bullet resist, and she has a chomp that does lifesteal and missing health damage. So I don't think this character needs a disarm on top of having the rest of her kit. That might be a little bit too much, but like I said, I don't think a character should have pretty much everything in their kit without having to buy something. Because you have a disarm, you have a slow, you have a immobilize, you have a jump, you don't necessarily need to buy disarming hex. You don't necessarily need to buy extra stamina, but of course you buy it. You don't need to buy locket because you have so much mobility. Just adding those factors on allows this character to excel even more. So I think removing or changing some of her kit might be a good option. And I think another thing to look at is just her base lifesteal in her Lycan form with the Go for the Throat, her 1 ability. She gains at 2 ability points a total of 65% lifesteal. You might add Life Curse or melee lifesteal into that aspect as well. Just she gains a tremendous of HP back, especially with the chomp. So these are big things to consider. Maybe you tweak these numbers a little bit. I'm no dev. I can't tell you the perfect amount of numbers or percentage, but I do believe this number should be tweaked a little bit, maybe lower it, maybe 50%. I think 65 is quite a lot base because you also add items on top of that, that just grants her a lot more. And I think overall, just a damage nerf in general would also be a pretty good idea. But like I said, I'm no dev. I have no perfect ideas. Do let me know what you think in the comments down below about your own changes if you have any. But for my final thoughts, the Silver excels because she compresses damage, utility, survivability, and mobility into one incredibly efficient kit. She wins fights by overwhelming opponents with pressure and forcing mistakes. The key to beating her isn't matching her aggression, it's denying her close range brawls she wants, limiting her healing, and punishing her whenever she commits too far forward. A disciplined team that controls space and coordinates crowd control can turn one of Deadlock's strongest heroes into an easy target. But yeah, like I said, if you like what you saw or want to see more of this content, definitely consider subscribing, definitely checking out the channel, and of course hitting that like button. And if you want to go the extra mile and support me a little bit more, you can also consider becoming a YouTube member, checking out the Patreon, and checking out the Twitch as well. All that linked in the bottom. But anyways, I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.